G'day, Michael from Ironbark Game Studio, and in this tutorial series I will be taking you through the full development process to create a game-ready character from scratch. This will cover creating a base mesh, modelling armour and props, sculpting a detailed head and then retopologizing it into a simpler mesh, UV mapping and then texturing in Substance Painter, creating a rig for the character and then binding that rig to the mesh, creating an animated walk cycle, and finally exporting our characters to either the Unreal or Unity game engine. These tutorials are targeted at a beginner to intermediate level, so you should have some knowledge of the Blender interface. You can check out our Blender workflow series if you're completely new to Blender. This series will be released in weekly parts on the channel, however you can have access to the full series now, including starting files and tutorial notes from the Patron link in the description. So let's take a look at the character concept this series will be following all the way through. So I've made this sketch of Fleur, who is a female alien humanoid, and she's going to be the medic in a team of playable characters in a top-down shooter in a sci-fi setting. She's going to have sleek aquatic features with pale mauve skin and large dark eyes. And because she's the medic, she's going to have medical insignia on her, and her colour scheme's going to be this light bluish grey with white and silver metallic accents. So thinking a bit about the intended use. Because the game is a top-down shooter, the character doesn't need to be highly detailed and can have a reduced poly count. However, we want to do some close-up renders, so the character has to have a moderate amount of detail to it. It's much easier to reduce the quality later than trying to add details. So I'm going to aim for a target poly count of around 20,000 tries. The helmet should be removable for renders and hero shots. However, when the helmet is on, the head should be disabled to improve performance in the game. The rig structure is going to be humanoid, which will allow the rig to have humanoid animations targeted to it if custom animations are not made, or if we've made animations for another character that we want to bring across. So now we can break down the concept into the different parts which we can model separately. So the helmet, as this is removable, we need to have this as a separate mesh. The head, although this could be modelled with the rest of the body, being able to disable it when the helmet is on is a useful option. The body is mostly going to be separate from the armor pieces and is going to form the base mesh. Part of the base mesh, however, is also going to have the chest plate and also the legs. This is going to make our lives a fair bit easier when we get into binding. Armor pieces on the arms, knees, shoulders, and upper legs, these can all be modelled separately and will be easy to bind to the rig as they don't extend across bones. The belts and also the cloth are going to be modelled separately as well. So jumping in, we're going to be creating a base mesh. Now we could model the base mesh from scratch, but I do have these template images which I'm going to be using as a bit of a guide and a reference. So I have this female front, side, and top-down views. So I'm just going to left-click and drag each one of these images from my folder into Blender, making sure not to drag them directly on top of each other, otherwise that will replace the image. So just drag them anywhere in the scene, and then we can jump into Blender. I'm going to delete the default camera and the light, because they're just going to get in the way, so select both with Shift, X, and delete. I'll then select my 3 reference images. I'm going to reset the rotation and the location with Alt-R and Alt-G. So they're going to appear in the center there. And now I want to scale them down into an appropriate size. So I'm going to press numpad 7 to look for my top view. And this cube in the middle here, this is a 2 meter by 2 meter cube. So we want to size down our reference images to be a little bit smaller than that. So I'm going to hit Alt-Z to go into X-ray, S to scale, and I'm going to scale these so it's about 1.8 meters high, so 10 centimeters on the top and bottom difference. Just going to rotate out of that, and we want to move the reference images to the different sides. So I'm going to grab the top-down view here. It's going to grab Z, so it's just beneath there. Going to grab the side-on view. Just going to go RX 90, then RZ 90. Grab it along the X-axis there. And the front-on one, just going to hit RX 90, grab it out on the Y. Now I'm going to select the side and the front ones. We're going to hit 1 to go into the front view. And I'm just going to move these both up so that the feet are roughly on the 0 point there. Okay. So we've got our references set up. I'm going to select the cube now. We're going to be working with this cube. I'm going to press Tab to go into edit mode. Then I'm going to hit 1 to go into the front view. And I'm going to scale down this cube and move it up. So it's roughly the same width as the body. Alright, something like that. And I'm going to mirror our mesh here. So I only want to work on one side. It's going to save us a lot of time if we only have to extrude, model one of the arms and one of the legs. So I'm going to hit Control R. And I'm going to create a loop cut down the center. So left click, then right click. I'm going to marquee select the side edges here, X and vertices. And then I'm going to go to my modifier properties here. And I'm going to add a mirror modifier. So the default axis on the X should be the one that you want. There's one more thing that we can tick in here, and that's clipping. So without clipping turned on, if I grab one of these center vertices here, and I move it, that's going to create this hole and split it away from the center there. If we have clipping turned on, and we try to grab it, it's going to keep it on that center edge. So we're not going to overlap on the mirror. Next step is to start adding in edge loops and shaping. So I'm going to go Control R, and I'm going to use the mouse wheel to create about 6 edge loops here. And I'm just going to grab these and move them along the x-axis inwards, and I'm just going to follow the contour of my reference image there. Like so. Working down to the legs, I'm going to grab these bottom vertices here and extrude those down. And I'm going to create one more extrusion down here. And this vertex on the side, I'm going to move this one across here, like that. What this is going to do is it's going to redirect the edge flow around the legs. So I'll show you that in a bit. But for now I'm just going to grab these vertices here, and I'm just going to start extruding down the leg. We might get to a point where we want it to be completely straight. So a couple of methods to get these vertices completely straight and in line with each other. We could come up here to our snapping tool and turn on snap to vertex. And then if we grab these vertices on the side, press a GZ to move it on the Z axis, and then hold down Control to activate snapping, we can hover over that vertex there, and it's going to snap to that vertex on the Z axis only. Another way to completely flatten out the vertices here is if we go S, Z, and 0. And that will size it on the Z axis and make sure that that plane is completely flat. We'll then just keep extruding down the leg. You can either do this in little increments or larger ones, and then add additional edge loops, like so. Keep extruding down, go around the shape of the calf. We don't have to add too many vertices to start off with. We want to keep it fairly low detailed whilst we're doing this sort of outline stage, but we want to get enough of the shaping in there. That will be good enough for the feet for now. We'll come back to that a bit later. So coming up back to where we had that leg extrusion, if I hold down Control R, I'll show you what I mean by the edge flow. If I hover over the leg, we can see that the edge flow goes from around here down the leg. If we hover it over the body, we can see it cuts down the body. So that means we can add additional detail to the body or the leg, and it's not going to affect the other. Coming up to the arm, we're going to do a similar thing here. So I'll give another extrusion up. And then one more, we're going to skip the shoulder area. And I'll just add a few for the neck. And we're going to ignore the head because that's going to be a separate mesh. And then for the shoulder, I'm going to do one extrusion out there. And then one more. And like the leg, we're going to redirect the edge flow. So I'm going to grab these vertices down here and pull that all the way up to the top of the shoulder. And then I can start extruding out from this side here. So again, if we hold down Control R, we can see that the edge flow around the body stops at the shoulder there, and the edge flow around the arm is going to stop at the other side of the shoulder. So if we add more detail to the arm, it's not going to affect the body. If we add more detail to the body, it won't affect the arm. So I'm going to keep extruding along the arm now. We can use the same trick to make this side flat. So if I go S and then X, 0, that's going to make that completely flat there. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can just make it a little bit easier to line things up. And we're going to stop around where the wrist is. So we're going to make the hands as separate meshes. Because they've got fingers, it's going to involve more geometry, and it's probably easier to do this as a separate mesh. So this is the body so far, looking from the front. It's not looking too bad. If we rotate to the side though, it's obviously very blocky. So I'm going to press 3 to go into the side view now. I'm just going to line this up with the side view template. So for the feet, we're just going to sort of bring them down to stumps for now. Again, I'm also going to add a separate mesh later on for the foot, so we'll worry about that later. Let's just move all of these along the y-axis to line up with the leg. It's going to look a little bit strange when we get to the top of the leg, where it's connected to the body, so we're just going to do our best to line things up. It doesn't have to be perfect, just needs to be close enough for now. We can also add additional geometry later if we need to define particular areas. So we're getting around to the arm area now. This is going to be a little bit trickier. We're going to have to use the top-down view for this. But I do want to grab these neck vertices and also move them in. And I'll just define the shoulder area as well, just so I know where I'm working from. And then I'm going to hit 7 to look from the top view. And let's shape this arm. Again, we might need some extra geometry to define the elbow and other areas of the arm. For now, we're going to keep it simple and add in the detail later. Just going to hit Alt-Z to get out of X-Range, take a bit of a better look around. Check the different views, make sure it's looking okay. Looks like we might need some more geometry around here later. Bring these ones in a little bit, but so far so good. And we might just want to shape the neck a little bit as well. I think that's the shoulder there, so that needs to be brought in a bit as well. Okay. Alright, so I've now shaped it from the front and side views. Obviously still looking very blocky, but we do have a much nicer shape now. So this is the point where we can add a few extra edge loops in here. So I'm going to hit Control R. I'm going to add 2 edge loops around the side here. I'm going to hit Control R. I'm going to add 2 edge loops around the leg. Control R. 2 edge loops around the center of the body. And finally, 2 edge loops around the arm. Not finally, because we do want to add extra edge loops around the body chest area there. So I've got a whole bunch of more geometry that we have to work with. Easiest way to shape the edges, get some more rounded, more natural organic shaping. I'm going to hold down Alt and then left click on one of the outside edges. I'm then going to press G twice, so double tap G, and then I can slide it along the edge. Let's double tap G and then slide it. That's going to allow me to get some nice rounded shaping. So I'm going to go around to each one of the sides here, hold down Alt, left click, and then double tap G and start rounding off those sides. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. We're just working on the shaping a bit at a time. Okay, looking pretty good so far. We might want to do some additional shaping. A little tip, if you want to select a line of vertices, select one vertex, hold down Control, and left click another one. It's going to pick the shortest path between them. It's going to allow me to target particular areas for additional shaping. Again, just double tapping G to slide, or just manually moving them out. Still looking a bit blocky around the neck, so I'll tackle this next. Because we've got a bit more geometry on this side, I might just go to the back view and grab some of those vertices out. Just got to be a little bit careful not to select any of the shoulder. Just move these all out and then just do a bit more shaping using the template as a guide. Okay, that's looking pretty good for the body. So of course we can always come back to this, but before we add too much detail, let's get the hands and feet done and then connect it all up. So for the hands, I'm going to get out of edit mode, so just press tab, and I'm going to add a new cube. Going to hit tab, scale it down, then move it out to roughly where we want the hand to be. Now the reason why I'm moving it in edit mode is that the pivot point is going to stay in the center of the scene there. So when we mirror it to the other side, it's going to perfectly mirror to the other side where we want it. Just scale this down, go into top view, and this is going to be for the finger. So same principle as the body, I'm just going to extrude it out along the finger, along the template. Alright, and we'll check it from the front view now. Alright, and now we need to add some additional geometry. So I'm going to go Control R, and I'm going to put a loop cut around the side there. Control R, and I'm going to put 2 loop cuts around the top and the outside. And same technique, I'm going to use the edge slide, tap G to round off the finger. We also want a bit nice sort of a point at the end as well. And now let's go to the back of the finger, where I'm going to go into face selection. I'm just going to select these end faces there, and I'm going to delete them. Then going to grab the top 3 edges and the bottom 3 edges, and I'm going to hit E to extrude along the x-axis, and I'm going to do that twice. Now with this top and bottom center edge, just going to grab that along the x-axis there. I'm then going to create a face between these 2 outside edges. And this is also going to redirect the edge flow. So this has quite a lot of detail in the finger, but we can see that we're going from 3 faces here to 1 face. So it's not going to carry along all of that detail through the rest of the hand and arm. We can also test this with Control R to get our loop cut, and we can see that the loop is running around the whole finger, but it's not going to run up the rest of the arm. So I'm just going to check from the top view, and I might do a little bit of shaping here. And with that, we're going to copy and paste this mesh to the other fingers. So I'm going to hit A to select this whole finger, go into top view, it's going to hit Shift D, move it along there. Obviously we're going to have to resize and reshape these. If you want to select all of the vertices of a single finger, or a non-connected mesh, press L. I might dissolve this edge loop here, so I'll select the edge loop, hit X, and dissolve edges. And for the index finger, I'll delete this edge loop as well, X, dissolve edges, pull that finger back. And I think that's looking pretty good. So for the thumb, I'm just going to grab the top of one of the fingers. So I'll grab the top of the main finger we've been working with. Just going to hit Shift D to duplicate it and pull it out. And I'm going to rotate it on the X-axis by 90 degrees. Go into side view, and we'll pull this down here. And we might just rotate it a little bit like that. Oops, press H to hide. Just going to undo that. Pull there. Going to grab the tip and just sort of scale it up. And then we can just extrude this back along the thumb. And I'm just going to shape the end part here, where it's going to eventually connect up to the hand. Check from the top view, just going to move it in a bit. Might even scale it in just a little bit on the Y. Alright, and we might do some edits a little bit later on that. Okay, so we have our 5 fingers roughly in place. Now we've got to combine them all together and then form the hand. So on the side here, I'm just going to select these 2 faces there. I'm going to press F to create a new face. I do need another edge in there to line up with this one, so I'm going to hit Control R, add a loop cut, and then create faces in between those. Do the same on the other side. Select these 2 faces, select these 2 edges, hit F, create a loop cut, and then fill in those holes with F. And now in between them, I'm just going to select the edges on each finger, press F, create a face in between. And we might want to do a little bit more shaping. So if we just go from the top, and I'm just going to scale these side ones and just give a little bit more shape to the knuckles. If we wanted to straighten up this edge right here, we could hold down Alt, left click to select the full loop, and then we can just go S, X, and 0. And that's just going to flatten it out, make it a little bit easier for us to do the rest of the hand there. I also want to straighten out and shape the bits in between the fingers as well. So we just select both and just double G to slide them. And that's just going to get rid of the blockiness between the fingers. in theory, we could add additional loop cuts in here, but that's probably going to add a little bit too much geometry for our poly count. Okay, let's do the thumb now. So I'm just going to move these edges in just a little bit, like that. And then on the other side, I'm going to extrude these 5 outside edges, so not the ones on the inside. Let's just get a side view, E to extrude. And I'm kind of going to shape them a bit. Okay, something like that. And then with this center edge there, I'm going to extrude that out. And then I'm going to fill in the faces. Oops, fill in the faces there and there. So this is going to redirect the edge flow around the thumb. I'm going to move these in a bit, shape it all inwards. So. And now I'm going to extrude back the hand so that we have something to connect the thumb up to. So hold down Alt, select that full edge loop. I'm going to go into top view for this one. Just going to hit E to extrude on the X. And I'll do another one. E extrude X axis. And let's add a little bit of shaping to this, so making sure not to grab any parts of the thumb. Then from the side, I'll shape this side as well. And now we need to attach the thumb to the hand now. I'm going to come around here, and I'm going to have to redirect the edge flow again, just so that we don't have too much geometry we need to connect. I'm going to select this edge here, extrude it, going to extrude it again, and then I'm going to create a face between this edge and this edge. It's going to leave a hole which I can fill in. So a face here and a face here, making sure they're all kept as quads, so 4-sided faces. Now we only need to deal with this little bit here connecting up with the hand. So just do a little bit of straightening, and then I'm going to select this full edge loop here. And I'll hit E to extrude it. Sort of go along the Y and grab it up a little bit on the Z. It's going to look a little messy to start off with. And then we want to combine this vertex with this one here. So I'm going to select both, M, and I'll go merge at last. So the thumb vertex connects to the hand vertex there. This one and that one. M at last. M at last. So we're just merging those vertices together. Looking a little bit messy. Do a little bit of clean up now if we really wanted to. Okay, it's going to be good enough for now. We'll come back in a little bit. We might just want to move these along. Like so. And make this connection point a little bit more natural. Sliding vertices is so useful. Okay. Let's create the rest of the hand now. So I'm going to be selecting all the edges around here, with the exception of that edge and that edge. And then I'm just going to hit EX to extrude back once, and EX again. And we just want to fill in the faces between these holes now. So around here, and this one here. And on the other side, let's slide this one a little bit closer. Oops. Face. And a face there. Again, let's just slide these along to make that point a little bit more natural where they converge. Might even come in here and shape the bottom of the hand a little bit too. And round off these square sides. Okay, so the hand's getting pretty close to done. We do have a problem though, is that we have far too many vertices or edges around the hand here compared to where we want to join it up. So if I turn on the statistics there, it's going to bring up our poly count, and the number that we've got selected is 18 edges, whereas for the arm we have 12 edges. So I need to somehow convert these 18 edges into 12. So I'm going to grab this edge loop, I'm going to extrude it back once more, so E and then X. Just going to go to the top view. Might just size X 0. And just try to shape the top of the hand, make sure it's still following the contours of the template. Now we're going to do a bit of shaping of these edges. Go to the top view. Going to grab these 6 edges, so the 3 edges on the top and bottom. It's going to move them this way a little bit. Then going to grab these, extrude them out, and then create faces. And if we take a look at our edge count now, we're now down to 14 edges. So we've gone from 18 edges to 14. So we need to get rid of another 2. So I'm just going to do this on the side, sort of where the thumb is. I'm just going to pull these back. And I'm going to create a face in here. And now this edge count should now be 12. So that matches the edge count of the end of the arm. We do need to do a fair bit more shaping now. So again, I'm just going to use a lot of edge sliding to get this all looking a bit neater and more organic. Okay, let's do a final check of our edge flow. So if we hold down Control R to get our loop cut tool, we can see the edge flow running around the fingers. See the edge flow running around the side of the hand here. We've cut it off around the thumb there. We've got some edge loops running around the hand. It's all looking pretty neat. So now we've got to combine the hand to the wrist of our character. So I'm going to tab out of edit mode, tab into edit mode of the body, and I'm going to delete all of these faces here. Delete them. And then I'm going to select the hand first and the body second. And I'm going to join them together. So I'm going to hit Control J, and because I selected the body as the main primary mesh, it's going to retain the mirror modifier, and it's going to mirror the hand to the other side. Now I'm going to come in here and I need to sew the wrist to the hand. So let's just create some new faces between them. We could bridge them. So I'm going to select this edge loop here, this one here. I'm going to right click and we're going to go bridge edge loops. And let's take a look from the front. And let's take a look from the top. I just want to slide these across, just so they're a bit better in line with each other. And I think that's going to just about do it for the hand. Okay. So let's move on to the feet. Now we could extrude feet out of the sort of stumps here that we've got at the ends. This is going to work fine for things like boots. If you want things like toes, then you're going to go through another process like doing the hands. But for my character, I'm going to do it with a separate cube because I've got these two-toed boots with a bit of webbing in between them. So it's just going to be easier to model them separately and then combine them later. So I'm going to tab out of edit mode. And I'm going to add another cube. Go into edit mode, scale it down, and move it across. Again, making sure that the origin point is still in the center of the scene, so it's going to work when we mirror it. And let's just go into side view. Sort of roughly line it up. Okay. And we're going to add some loop cuts, so Control R, I'm going to add 2 there, and I'm going to add 2 around the side there. And I want to grab these front faces there from the side view. I'm going to move these back. Might scale the whole thing up just a little bit, move it up, sort of in line with the foot there. Gonna grab these back faces there. Actually, I'll just grab the top edge there and move that up so it's in line with the foot outline. Okay, now we want to extrude the faces on this side and this side because we want 2 toes, so we're going to leave this center as a gap. Going to go into side view, extrude those. Want to scale them on the z-axis and just bring them down. If I do Control, I can snap it to the bottom of the foot there. And I might actually grab all of these bottom vertices and snap them to the bottom of the body mesh there. Okay. Now we can add some edges along here and then do some shaping. So I'll add 3 edge loops to each side. Go back and do side view and just start shaping them. Kind of want to make sure these bottom edges sort of flow along the same lines as the top ones. Okay, so far so good. Now, to create that webbing in between the toes, I'm going to select these faces here. But I'm not going to select these back ones. We're going to sort those out later. And I'm going to right click and then bridge those faces together. I then want some additional geometry in here so I can do a little bit more shaping. So I'm going to hit Control R and add 2 loop cuts in there. And I'm gonna have to redirect the edge flow to line this all up. So I'm going to select this back face here. I'm going to hit E to extrude it. I'm then going to select this back face there, right click, and then bridge those faces together. Might move this just a little bit further back. Alright, just scale it up a little bit as well on the Z. Cool. And then we're going to have to delete all of these faces in here. There, there, there. X, delete faces. And then we're going to have to bridge the gaps. So let's select the edges there. F to create face. Same there. I can pull this down a little bit too much. Let's just neaten that up. And then on the top, we'll create some faces along the sides there. Whoa. Face. And face. So just redirect that edge flow, so we've got 3 faces in here to shape as opposed to just 1. We're gonna do a pretty similar thing for the toes. So I'm gonna come up here and add an edge loop around there. And then I'm going to delete these 2 faces and also these 2 faces here. The reason I'm doing that is that when I add an edge loop here, it's not going to conform all the way around. It's going to stop where I've deleted that face, so we don't have the edge loop up here. Do the same for the other side, Control R, add the edge loop. And once again, we're going to have to redirect the edge flow around these gaps. So if I add a cut here, and I might just scale this in on the x-axis, and I'll just select this one and this one, hit F for face, this edge and this edge, face, and then these ones here as well. So again, we're keeping them all quads. Each one of these faces has 4 sides, and we've just redirected the edge loop around here, but we haven't added any more faces or edges along the top here. So we're going from what would be 5 edges to 3. Do the same for the bottom as well. Control R, scale it in on the X, create a face between those 2 and those 2, and these ones. And if we hold down Control R, we can see that edge loop goes all the way around. Okay, so now we've got a fair bit of geometry to work with our shaping of the foot. So let's grab these edges and just slide them to add some shaping. I might just keep the bottom of the feet relatively flat though. And I kind of want the toes to be splayed out a little bit. I don't want them to be completely straight. So I might just grab, let's go to the top view, grab this toe here, and I might just go RZ to rotate on the Z axis, and then just grab it out on the X. Do the same with the other toe. Grab those vertices there, RZ, and grab that out on the X. And let's just scale these out as well. Shape the tips of the toes in here. Okay, looking pretty good. So let's just combine this with the foot before we do any more shaping so I can sort of hide the seams between the two. Let's go out of edit mode. Let's select this mesh here. And we have 1, 2, 3 edges that we're going to need to delete. So I'm going to grab these faces here. Delete those. We're going to have to sort of rearrange this a little bit so it's sort of in the shape of the foot. So let's just grab these faces, kind of move them up for now. I know it's going to look a little bit messy, but this will all be fixed. Okay, so we've got our 3x3 hole. Let's select the foot first, shift select the body second, and Control J copies it on the other side as well. Go into edit mode, and I don't really care about the shape of the foot down here. I really care about the shape of what we just made. So I'm going to select this first one and second one, and hit M, merge at last, so it merges over here. A quicker way to do this, as opposed to going through each of them, hitting M one by one. If we go up here and we select Auto Merge Vertices, if we select one vertex and move it close to another, it's going to essentially merge them together. So if I hold down Control for my vertex snapping, then left click to select, it merges that vertex into one there. So select one vertex, Shift grab, hold down Control for snapping, over the top. So that's just going to save us a little bit of time instead of clicking M. It's always a good idea to turn off the auto merge vertices when you're not using it. You can accidentally get rid of stuff that you're working on if things get too close to each other, so turn that off there. Okay, looking pretty good. Now let's just do a little bit more shaping. I kind of want to get that heel shape in there, make it a little bit less flat on the bottom. So that's looking pretty good so far. So we've got our feet, hands, got the body in. There's just a couple more steps that we want to do. So one of the things we need to consider now for the future is topology for our rig. So what I mean by that is around the joints, such as the knuckles, such as the knees and the elbows, we want to make sure our geometry is going to bend nicely with our rig. So that is going to involve adding a few more vertices in those sections that are going to bend. So let's just tackle the fingers first, because there's a whole bunch of knuckles that we can do. So I'm going to go into Edge Selection, and I'm going to select the knuckle of the finger. So this one here is where the knuckle of the index finger is going to be. Might even just hit period to zoom in on it, numpad period that is. And I'm going to hit V. V is going to rip this edge. In fact, I want to select these top three. So these top three edges, and then hit V to rip them. And I'm just going to move them apart from each other just a little bit, like that. Then I'm going to select these edges here, right click, and then Bridge Edge Loops. Control R, add an additional edge, and then fill in these faces here. We'll want to shape this just a little bit, so I'm going to grab these ones and slide them out a little bit. I might just grab these up and pull them up just a bit too. So the main thing this is going to achieve is this knuckle is going to bend a lot nicer than this one here, because this has more geometry to stretch. It also further defines the knuckle itself in the mesh, which is quite nice. So I'm going to have to do this for each one of these knuckles. Okay, and finally let's add one last joint for the thumb. Okay, And that is the joints done for the knuckles. We're going to do a similar process for the knee here. Let's just press numpad period, zoom in on the knee. And we're going to grab these front 3 edges here and press V to rip. Lift them up, bridge them, add in our loop cut in the middle, fill in those faces, and then just do some extra shaping. And I'll show you the edge flow around the knee here. So if I go Control R, and if I hover over here, we can see that the knee actually stops the edge flow running all the way up the leg. Same with the bottom of the knee here, it sort of stops the edge loop going all the way down the leg. Finally, let's do the elbow. This one I'm going to do a little bit differently from the other ones. So I'll start off with the same process by ripping just a single edge here. I'm going to bridge these edges, and I'm going to add 3 cuts in the middle now. And I'm going to create a face here, 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 and here. And I'll do a little bit more shaping. That should be going up like that. And go down. And although this doesn't redirect edge flow from one part of the arm to the other, it's quite messy now that it goes across, but it does create sort of like this inner circle, which again creates more geometry, so when you're bending it with the rig, it's going to look a lot nicer. We're pretty much at a point where you could save this as a base mesh and then use it for a whole bunch of other characters. I suppose with the exception of the 2-toe boots, which is very specific to this character. But this would be a nice point to save it as a base mesh. I'm going to add one more detail to my character. My character has these sorts of fins on them, so on the arms and the legs, got these fins coming off them. So I'm going to come down to the back of the leg here, and I'm going to select these 6 faces. There. I'm going to hit I to inset. So it's kind of like extruding, but it's not pulling it out or in, it's just insetting the faces. And then I'm just going to do a bit of shaping to make it more rounded. Again, just using the edge slide. Like that, get a nice sort of rounded shape from what was a square. Select these faces again, and I'm just going to extrude them out. So maybe we'll go into the side view for this. Sort of extrude. Let's just sort of rotate like this and go S, Y, 0 so that they're nice and flat. Then let's scale, grab, rotate them, and extrude up into these sort of fins. Might have tapered it a little bit too thin there, so I'll just come in here and start to rescale them up. If I really wanted to get in here, I could grab these edges and sort of just taper the very top as well. And I also want one for the arm. So this is a case where I might want to add in a new edge loop in here. So let's go Control R there. And I think that'll do. I will need to shape this edge loop because I don't want it to be completely straight. I'll just scale Z up a little bit. Go back to the back view, and we'll do the same as we did for the legs. So we'll select 6 faces there, I to inset, and we'll shape this into more of a circle. Select these faces here, and let's extrude them. Let's go from the top this time. Taper these ones in. And with that, the base mesh is done. So we have a fairly convincing character mesh so far with good edge flow. It is just a base mesh, so in the next part of the series we're going to be adding armor and accessories to the character. This will cover the technique of adding armor directly to the base mesh and also creating pieces as separate meshes. We'll also be looking at shading with how to create smooth surfaces and hard edges to define soft surface and hard surface objects. Thanks for watching this video. Please like and subscribe if you found it useful. You can check out our Patreon link in the description with a variety of rewards such as starting files, tutorial notes, and early access to the rest of the series. And I'll see you in the next one.